The place, the Ukraine. The date, May 1942. After weeks of bitter fighting, Russian forces of the 38th Southwestern Army managed to break through German defense lines to the north and south of the city of Kharkov. Their objective, to remove the enemy. However, they were weary and failed, and German commanders counterattacked. Two Russian detachments in the south became cut off, in grave danger, as the Germans threatened to encircle them. Their only line of communication to Soviet command lay along a narrow corridor in the vicinity of Chepel village. May 21st. An advance guard of German motorized infantry stormed into Chepel and closed the corridor. Russian intelligence then reported that Germans were using Priship railway station to unload the tanks and artillery of the 3rd Panzer Division. However, most of the German crews and reinforcement detachments were due to arrive by a separate train from Kharkov and, if mobilized, would completely encircle and entrap the two Russian detachments. Their only hope lay near the village of Chepel, where the Soviet 23rd Tank Corps had been involved in a week-long offensive, making inroads into the German line. But with no air support, they paid dearly with their own blood for every kilometer gained. The remaining troops of the 23rd Tank Corps had only a handful of operational tanks left. The final objective of securing Kharkov seemed unachievable. They should have retreated long ago, as their soldiers, fuel, and ammunition were exhausted. But they knew the fate of thousands of stranded Soviet soldiers was in their hands.
The date, June 6, 1944. Operation Overlord, the largest offensive in military history, had gone as the Allies planned. American, British, and Canadian troops, supported by 3 airborne divisions, landed in Normandy under extensive enemy fire. While the operation succeeded in crushing the German defense, the cost to the Allies was many thousands of dead. German positions along the coastline of northern France were obliterated and the Allies threatened the remaining defensive lines. The U.S. Army, led by General Bradley, moved in the direction of Cherbourg, while British and Canadian forces under the command of General Montgomery approached the town of Caen as the door to the German defense in Paris. June 12, 1944. The British 4th Armored Division were set to assault the town of Villers-Bocage, which appeared to be an easy target, being defended by only a handful of German infantry, with no heavy weapon or armor support. The British hoped that by June 13, they would secure the town. Doing so would open a southern flank towards Caen. Conquering Caen would then allow the Allies to approach Paris in several days, and thus seal the fate of the German forces in France. All that stood in the way of an easy victory at Villers-Bocage was a handful of tanks of the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, led by Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann. Not only were the Germans in Caen depending on their success, but so too were all the German forces in France. If they held out, so would the Western Front.
The date, September 1944. After a summer of success for the Allied campaign in key areas of France, a new problem arose. Their aim was to advance through the Netherlands. Ahead lay the rivers of Maas, Waal, and Rhine, and a myriad of canals connecting them. Their goal, to bring the front line to the territory of the Third Reich. However, if the Allies continued with an armored ground offensive, then the German army could take out several key strategic bridges, severely hampering Allied progress. So Field Marshal Montgomery devised a plan to counter this possibility. The Allied advance would begin with an airborne infiltration attempt. The operation, codenamed Market Garden, aimed to parachute masses of Allied soldiers into the area with the objectives of securing the key bridges of Wesel, Grau, Nijmegen, and Arnhem. No serious resistance was expected, so these British and American paratroopers could hold the bridges long enough for the armored divisions to travel down the newly opened corridor and reach Arnhem within 48 hours of the airdrop. Once established in Arnhem, the Allies could then launch an all-out offensive into the heart of Hitler's empire and finish the war just weeks from the airdrop. The most important objective of this campaign was capturing the bridge at Nijmegen on the River Waal. This task was given to the American 82nd Airborne, famed for their fighting in Normandy. With this experience and excellent training, the division had no doubt they could succeed, inspired by the importance of this mission. But even they did not imagine how ferocious the wounded German army could be.
The date, August 1944. The German scientist Wernher von Braun had developed a two-stage missile weighing 100 metric tons and 30 meters tall, designed to cover the distance from Peenemünde to New York in just 36 minutes. Better known as the V-3, its target was Manhattan, New York. Using a planted radio beacon on top of a skyscraper for guidance, due to its extreme low accuracy. This awesome missile had a 1,000-kilo payload, which could cause untold casualties. No U.S. city had been bombed in the war so far, and Nazi command believed that the demoralizing effect of the missile attack would make the American people drop out of the war. This plan was dubbed Project America. Even though the U.S. Strategic Service Department, the SSD, learned of this plan, their attacks were unable to affect the development and testing of the V-3 since it was being carried out in secret underground facilities. August 29th, 1944. The Nazis successfully completed the test launch of the second stage of the V-3. In response, the SSD decided the main objective was to recover exact technical parameters of the missile guidance system from the crashed V-3 test launch and return it to Britain for analysis. And so, an Allied Special Operations Squad, codename Condor, was dropped off by the submarine Trident on the coast of France near Dunkirk.